This is part 3 of the GPS port injection install. This video we're going to go over how to actually install the components onto the port injection. As you can see, there are a lot of components right there, and so it will be a very detailed install, starting with the actual port injection itself. So one disclaimer, what I'm going to install right here, these two components, those are the first revision, and there were a few modifications that we had to do to make it fit. For example, as you can tell right here, this component, I had to shave that off because on the B8.5 engines, there is a temperature sensor on the cylinder head that on my B8 I did not have. And so on the new and improved design, you can tell right here that is a component that's already taken into account for. It's already machined off. And so the install that I'm going to show here is going to be on the original design, and it's very dirty because it's been running on my car since 2021. Lots of scratches from multiple installs and testing, and just general wear and tear of the components. I have a new version, as you can tell. It's laser engraved, looks pretty, very nice, no scratches. What I want to show you is right here, these two screws, that's where the tumbler actuator delete is going to be screwed onto, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then just another overview, this screw right here, that's where this component right here will get screwed on. If you recall from the first video, we had to unscrew that, and so that's where that gets screwed back on. So without further ado, we'll get into installing this. So the first thing that needs to be prepared is the fuel rail. Something that I did not mention in any of the previous videos is that these fuel rails will come equipped with this plug right here, but not with the and fitting. The and fitting will only come with the option 2 that has the fuel, the hard line, the stainless steel fuel hard line. And so also with these injectors only come with option 3, but to do this install properly, you obviously need injectors. And so the first thing that you want to do is you want to install these injectors. You definitely need some sort of grease to install these to prevent the O-ring from being damaged. The option 3 that comes with the injectors, it comes with the super lube grease. So that's what you would use to install these. So I have my grease right here. It's just a super lube. Ooh, you can't see it. One moment. Yeah, just super lube that comes with the injectors. You don't need very much. You just need to make sure that the O-ring will not get damaged while it's being installed. So you just put a little bit on there, and then you twist it in, and voila, that was very easy. We'll come to the orientation of these injectors here in a moment, but for now, you just grease these up, and mine are very dirty from being installed previously, so I gotta get some of that off of the injector body before I put any grease on there. But you get the idea. You just want to make sure that O-ring is going to be inserted smoothly and not tear. Because let's be honest, putting this onto the car and then coming out and finding out that the O-ring is not sealing properly is really a bummer. So I'll do the same on this side. And my finger's so greasy already, I didn't even need anything for that third one. Okay, so installed, and installed. All right, now we're going to get to installing these onto the manifold. So also with the O-ring that goes to the intake manifold, those need to be greased as well. And then you install them in. So the orientation that they are in right now, they need to go up just a little bit. Let's make sure that you can see that. So these need to be slightly up. That's too far. That's just right. And there are reliefs in the intake manifold right here and right here to allow for that. Let's see, there you go. Because once you go to install these, you need to have room for the plugs for the injectors. And so you just start wiggling it in there a little bit. And voila, there they go. So now you can see you have the injector, get rid of some of that dirt, the injector, and the injector poking through. All right, now that you have that installed, I'm going to move to the passenger side, and we're going to do the same thing. These O-rings need to be greased, and you want to make sure that they are in an orientation that allows the injector plug to be plugged in after you do the install. One thing I've known to do, or that I've grown accustomed to doing, is looking into the actual intake port and lining up the injector to the hole. That allows you to a lot easier to line it and make sure it goes into the injector slot, I suppose would be the term for that. Anyway, so there we go. Next, we're going to work on the tumbler valve delete. So now on to installing these tumbler valve actuators. So within this system, we have the encoder right here. We actually have the actuator, which is a pneumatic actuator that's run by the vacuum pump. Those are the two OEM components, well, technically three, with this seal right here. So the two seals. So these are the three OEM components that you have. What comes with the kit is this tumbler valve nipple actuator, and then the base that this all rides in. So within the tumbler valve, you have two different types. You have one, which is this one that goes on the passenger side. It is longer, and then you have the shorter one, which goes on the driver's side. You can install these incorrectly. You can accidentally switch them. However, when you go to install the actual tumbler valve, the nipple itself won't be long enough to reach, and that will be your first cue. So for the first step, you take one of the base. So both of these bases are the same. there is a slight relief cut right here. This faces down. So within the system you have here, you would install this down, and you can tell that kind of corresponds with this face right there, and that's the purpose of that. So that's the way that it is installed. So you take the green seal and you install it until it's flush, and then you install this into it, and it slides within that green seal. That's what gives it a gentle, smooth sliding operation. If that green seal was not there, it would be metal to metal contact, and it would be very difficult. It can bind, which would cause the check engine light to come on. And so then you go and install the actual encoder and the actuator. Now you can tell from here, I already installed this backwards because the encoder is supposed to be facing down like so, right? And so when you install it, this nipple right here needs to go into this arm on that actuator. And so now that is completely installed. Essentially, the best way for you to ensure that you have this installed properly is take a picture of the old valve before you take it apart, and then mimic that exactly when you put it back together with the new components. But that's how it is assembled together, and you can tell this turns freely. That's another main thing when you do start installing this. If for any reason this does not turn freely or rotate freely, there's an issue. And so you may need to redo some of the steps or figure out what's going on, because ultimately if this is not able to rotate freely, you will have a check engine light. Then you're going to take two of the screws that came with the kit. You're going to install them here, and then take a 2mm Allen wrench and install it right here. These screws are stainless, so there's no need to worry about any sort of corrosion that occurs. With a helicoil and an aluminum, the chance of cross metal contamination is minimized. There you go. And then you double check. And yeah, there you go. So that one's installed. Now we do the other side. Once again, we start with the base. We install this gasket, and then we first check, so it looks like it goes like that. So coming back off, that means that this nipple goes up, and then this comes together, and of course you have to make sure that it goes into the hole here. There you go. Now we take it here, wrong side. Get to the other two bolts, install it in there and in there. double check the actuator. So this actuator is a little bit too tight, so I tightened it a little bit too much, and there we go. Now you can tell I had to loosen these bolts a little bit. On the new design, that is a feature that's been fixed. On this old design, unfortunately, we've run into a situation in which when you tighten this too tightly, this rotating the piece that has the nipple on it gets in a pinch and a bind. And so when I install these, I have to install it with Loctite and install it just enough that it doesn't bind anymore. The new design, like I said, does not have that issue anymore, and so you can tighten it down as much as you want. Next, I will show you how to install the OEM fuel rail and this bracket that holds it down, including as some of the components that need to be installed prior to this component coming on. So the next step is to install the OEM high pressure fuel rail and this bracket. However, there are a few things that need to happen before then, just because if you install this bracket, it becomes almost impossible to do those things. The first one is if you purchase the option 2 with the hardline, the stainless steel hardline, then that needs to get installed prior to the bracket, because otherwise with this bracket installed, it becomes really difficult to get a wrench on this right here. And so what you want to make sure is that this is perfectly parallel with the rail right here. And once it is, you grab an adjustable, or if you have one of those fancy AN wrenches, you can grab that, and then you just tighten it down. Voila. The second thing that needs to happen before you install this is the, one moment while I look for it. On the split-second controller, or whatever controller you choose to use, these connectors are very difficult to install after this bracket is on. And so therefore, installing the connectors beforehand makes it much easier. And so you can tell on the fuel line, the hard line, there's just enough room for you to install this connector. Then you want to go underneath the fuel lines, and you want to install this one, and then continue on and install the last one here. And like I said previously, these relief cuts right here make it simple. You can rotate them up to make it easier to click in, and then rotate them over so that they are kind of parallel with this fuel rail. And so then you have the remainder for the other side, and we'll get to that one in a minute. But those are the two main things you need to install prior to installing the bracket. So now you bring along the OEM high pressure fuel rail, and this gets a little bit tricky. You want to make sure that it clears those two tabs that align with this bracket. Those are what make it difficult to install this. So you almost have to pull out a little bit on the fuel rail to give it some space for this lip here to get past it, and then once it's past it, you can push it back in. So just like that, pull it out a little bit. It also helps to go at an angle a little bit. Depending on which angle you go at. There we go. That one's in. Pop back out. There we go. So I had to pull back a little bit, and now you push it back in. And ultimately it doesn't matter because these two pins will hold it all in place once this bracket comes on. Now, one thing to watch out for is when you flip this over, and my little shrouding here has been a little bit damaged and coming apart. Gotta retighten this. There we go. Anyways, one thing to watch out for is you do not want to pinch these wires in between the OEM injector and the fuel rail or the high pressure fuel rail or any of that. So oftentimes it helps to really kind of snake that around there and hold it in place so that it can't get pinched. Then once that's been completed, you take this, you insert it into the two holes. Now if you recall, one of the ways that we took this off was by rotating it. So you rotated this forward so it cleared and then pushed it down. That's really difficult to do with the with it being installed on the low pressure fuel rail right here for the port injection. And so oftentimes you really have to put a lot of force into it and then push down and then pull back to clear the rails. But just like that, it's cleared. And now you have this side right here almost ready to go in with a few other things such as the O-rings on the top and the bottom still needing to be completed. But main thing is make sure that these lines do not get pinched because if they get pinched, you're going to be in here doing it all over again. Now we're going to move to the other side. Same thing on the other side. You want to make sure that you install these injector plugs. Oh, I'm backwards. There we go. Now this is the only one that's a little bit different because of the actuator here. And so this one's going to have to be a little bit up. All the other ones are going to be parallel. And so you go in here and you just clip them in place. It becomes very difficult to do though if you have the bracket already installed. There you go. Rotate them a little bit. And this one is ready for the OEM high pressure fuel rail. And now the bracket. So it's installed into the two back ones right here. Once it's barely installed, you want to rotate it forward and then push it down. And then you have to rotate it in that direction a little bit so that it clears the actual port. But it's all about a rotation. These, even the OEM one, they do not go in straight down. There's a particular rotation that helps it be installed and taken apart. But anyway, so these two are almost ready. The second to last thing is to install the two screws that come with the kit into that insert, and it is an M2, which is right here. excuse me, nope, it's an M1.5 that goes into that. And it's fairly simple. Once you find the screw hole in the inserts, you just tighten it up. Does not need to be tight. Once again, this is just holding it in place while you're assembling it. The actual screws that hold all of this together are the main ones that tighten this completely down. Let's see, where did that go? Oh, I already put it in. And then you install the O-rings. These are not the O-rings I'll be using, but they'll do the job for the video. These are really cheap O-rings from eBay, and they're definitely not OEM. But it sure does look better with the green O-rings on top. And then, of course, the red O-rings on the bottom need to be installed, and then you are ready to install this entire kit into the vehicle. A few things to point out at the end of this video. The hard line for this can be installed while it's on the vehicle, and then this needs to be installed prior to the passenger side bank port injection being installed. And so that will be in a separate video, but something to note that for now, skip adding this just because it needs to happen before you install this on the vehicle. Thank you for watching, and the next videos will show how to install this on the vehicle. So a quick update. Initially I told you that this injector that is on the driver's side at the back near the oil filter needs to fit in between this little curve right here, but actually it needs to go underneath the hard line here, right beside the OEM injector for cylinder number 6. This is part 4 of the port injection install. So we've already gone over how to assemble the port injection with the OEM brackets here. And so now we're going to go into what we need to install this onto the engine. So we have our O-rings here. I don't have the O-rings on hand for the bottom, but you need to install those as well right here. And then going over here, we have this fitting that comes with the hardline kit. This will go in the high pressure fuel pump. This fitting will go underneath the supercharger that ties all of the fuel rails together. And this fitting goes on the high pressure fuel pump as well. And then we have this one that is the hard line for the passenger side port injection. And then we have this one. This one goes from the high pressure fuel pump on this side to underneath the supercharger right here that attaches to the T.